Hi everyone, this is Britt Simon. Good morning to you. I'm talking to you from California. Happy to greet whoever is available to ask any questions. If you have any questions, by all means, please feel free to come and join those. Um, now, I just want to start off by referring you to a video I posted yesterday. I'm hoping that you've watched that video, which will address some of the questions I'm going to get asked about the visa bulletin, what my thoughts are about the next visa bulletin, the progress that has happened so far to date. I'm kind of concerned, I have to say, with the progress so far. Last month, they didn't schedule enough interviews. They scheduled almost 2,500. This month, again, they've scheduled around about the same number, 2,500 and something. It's not enough. They need to be scheduling more than that. If they're going to get to the right number of scheduled interviews, they need to be scheduling more. So I'm kind of disappointed with how they're doing. They started off the year very well, actually, and they've lost ground a little bit. They've sort of gone behind a little bit. So kind of concerned about that. Anyway, DV 2020 and DV 2021, no news on those two cases. I know Curtis has filed his answer to the government with regard to his request to stay the order, but there's no outcome of that yet, right? So there's no real news on that. It's just some of the legal wranglings going on. Okay, so. Kilani, I like this sort of question. Have an interview on the 3rd of April with my family. Any tips or questions? Look, firstly, you don't need to rehearse your answers to questions. The questions you get will be very generic, very easy, and they're just looking to confirm certain things on your form, perhaps, or what your plans are about in America. So, for example, if you're currently a baker, and they say to you, hey, what do you plan to do in America? Don't answer, I'm going to be an astronaut, or I'm going to be a software engineer, or I'm going to be a lumberjack. If you've got no skills in those areas, then don't give an unrealistic answer because you've heard somebody else's answer and you think this is a good answer to give, right? Always the best answer to any question you're asked is a simple answer to the question. Honest answer from your own experience, your own situation, not somebody else's answers, right? In terms of other tips to prepare, just make sure you've got all of the documents. Read through the instructions. Read the embassy-specific instructions. Make sure you've got all of your police certificates. Make sure you've got extra documents if you feel you may need them. Have you got something about financial position, your ability to support yourself? Have you got a plan for when you arrive in America? Where will you go? What sort of, where are you thinking of going? So, think about all of those things. Make sure your documents are nice and organized. Appear ready for the interview, right? Don't go in there with, scraps of paper and be rummaging around with paper. You should have all of your main documents, like your birth certificate, your marriage certificate, your education documents. Have all of those first, and anything that you feel you might need, just have that as a backup section in a pile of papers or in a big envelope or something like that. Okay, and make sure you've got that stack of required documents for every person involved in the case, right? So for your spouse and for any children. But good luck on the 3rd. I'm sure it'll be easy. Most interviews take 5 minutes or less. It's really that simple, and there are no trick questions. They're not looking to catch you out. The COs actually like doing interviews for DV Lottery because it's a very happy event, and they're not looking for liars or cheats or anything like that. It's just a happy thing. It's a chance thing, and so they actually like doing those interviews. They're not looking to reject people at all. They would prefer not to reject people. And so, it's a happy thing for the CO, and they know you're happy. It's a wonderful thing. So, it'll be a quick, easy interview, I'm sure. Okay. Do I think Dar Salam will improve? Look, Dar Salam have got a small number of cases. In Tanzania, there were 348 people selected for Tanzania, right? And if you think about that, that would be about 200 cases, roughly, maybe a little bit less than that, a little bit more, but roughly about 200 cases for all of the people selected in Tanzania. And those 200 cases are spread over the full number range of 122,000 case numbers. So at the moment, it would be a surprise to me if more than about 50 or 60 or maybe 70 cases were current, and they've scheduled 82 cases, right? And the reason they've scheduled a few more is because there's a few people in Tanzania that are not from Tanzania, right? So other people interviewing at Dar Salam. So I hear all this sort of concern and hand wringing and people getting worried about Dar Salam, but the reality is you've got nothing to worry about. You just need to be patient. And so just chill out, relax, you'll be fine. Okay. How are you doing? How's South America? South America is doing well. There are no backlogged embassies there. I was asked that question this morning. I had a quick look. Havana, what am I saying? Havana, Guayaquil, Lima. They all seem to be doing very well. And so I have no doubt they'll continue to do well and keep up with the visa bulletin. I don't know what we're going to see for the next visa bulletin in South America. For South America and Oceania, they're not very behind where I would expect. In fact, Oceania actually jumped up quite a lot last visa bulletin, and I think they may not jump again quite so much. The risk range for Oceania, for example, starts at around about 2,000, 2,100 or so. So that means that they're pretty close to where they need to be, considering there's 4 months left. So we might only see small jumps for Oceania, and I think maybe it won't be a massive jump for South America. In Europe, Asia, and Africa, I'm expecting larger jumps in the next visa bulletin. So we'll see. 37K, Cairo, Egypt. Well, it's probably going to be okay, but it really depends on what Egypt do in terms of scheduling. They just scheduled, I think, 150 cases for the month of March, which is for May interviews. And so, they could be doing a lot better, in all honesty. In past years, we've seen them schedule 250, 300 interviews per month. So they're really not performing as well as they should be. And they have a lot of cases to interview. There's a lot of people whose home embassy is Cairo. It's not just Egyptians, it's Sudanese as well. So there's about 11,000 selectees that would hope to get an interview in Cairo, as well as other people that are living in that busy city or busy part of the world, right? So they really do need to get a move on, and I'm hoping in this last 4 months they do exactly that, but we'll see. Have a question. How limited country gets small CN? Okay, I explained this in a video quite recently, explaining why some countries have only their cases are only concentrated in the first few thousand numbers. Essentially, it's because they have so many selectees. If you take the case of in Asia, for example, we'll just use Asia as an example. Iran and Nepal both get low numbers. So there's no Nepalese case above 13,000 in terms of a selectee, whereas Asia goes on to 40,000 something, right? And so why are all the Nepalese cases concentrated in that first 13,000? Well, it's because the government stopped taking cases and making winners from Nepal at a certain point. So they start taking the draw at 1 and 2 and 3, and they go from the earliest number and they count upwards. At some point, they get to what they consider to be enough cases from Nepal, and then the same thing from Iran. That number for Nepal is typically around about 3,800 selectees, which would be about 2,000 cases. And when they get to that point, they just stop drawing from that country. They ignore or disqualify immediately as part of the draw. They disqualify those cases from that point onwards, right? Which means that if you're from Nepal or from Iran, you have had a lower probability of being selected than anybody else in Asia. So if those numbers were allowed to continue, if they continue to draw Nepalese cases, we would see something like 12,000 selectees from Nepal, right? Compared to a few hundred from some other country. And that would be completely pointless to select thousands of people extra. And so they just stop it, right? They just stop that country at a certain point. So it's not that they have some special advantage. Actually, they have a disadvantage. They have less chance of selection than other countries in that region. But they're all low case numbers. So, many people get the wrong idea about that and feel like there's special preference or special opportunity being given to those low case number countries. But it's nothing of the sort. It's actually the reverse of what you might think. Okay. Okay. Case number is 69K in Tanzania embassy. Can I have chances? Yeah. If the region goes to above your country your number, then you've got some chances. Do I think it's going to go above 70,000? Yeah, I think it probably is actually. We might be about to see a reasonable jump in Africa. Africa is being held back at the moment, as are the three big regions. By not having enough scheduled interviews, and that's happening partly because the number is being kept quite low. At 52,000, it's quite low. It's also happening because some embassies are not scheduling to the limit. But there are some embassies that are scheduling to the limit, that right up to the numbers. So Monrovia, for example, Luanda, Johannesburg, to name a few. I just made a list of them this morning, actually. Of countries that are doing very well. Let me just give you a quick list. Yeah, I said Algiers, Casablanca, Monrovia, Lomé, Luanda, Johannesburg, Djibouti, and some others, right? But those embassies I just mentioned have got cases scheduled right up to about 50 or 52,000, meaning there is no backlog at those embassies, right? So those embassies, if they now make the number something like 62, 63, 65,000, which would be a pretty big jump, if they did that, then those embassies could schedule right up to that sort of limit. Whereas an embassy like Nairobi, for example, which is still, it's not, well, it is backlogged. Technically, it's backlogged. They're doing a lot of interviews, but they've got a lot of interviews to do, about 30 to 32 cases per 1,000 in Nairobi. And so they've got some catching up to do. They need to start increasing their numbers. So I'm hoping to see a fairly big jump in Africa, same in Europe and same in Asia. And that will allow some of the embassies which are not backlogged to push a little bit more and hopefully give it a bit more capacity. And we can get a decent number of cases scheduled, which we really need to see. So have you got a chance in Tanzania at 69K? Yeah, you've got a chance. You just have to wait and see. Just be patient. Yeah, what's the view about Tanzania? Yeah, I've talked about Tanzania. Any hope for Iran 10,500 to get 2NL? You should get the 2NL, yes. Yeah, you should get the 2NL. But I just want you to understand, if you're from Iran and you get a 2NL for a late month, like August or September, and possibly even July, if you're an Iranian male, then you've got a very high risk. If you have a late embassy and you're Iranian male, you've got a very high risk due to the after interview background checks that will be imposed on you almost 100% of the time. And so next interviews we're going to see scheduled are for June. You really need to get current for June so you can have your interview in June and then have 2 to 3 months where you've got a really good chance of them completing your background checks in time. If, on the other hand, you don't go current and you don't get an interview until July or August, then your chances are decreasing because of that time issue. You could run out of time. Because if you're in 221G and September 30th comes around, then your case is over. You're not going to be allowed to continue past the September 30th. Okay, it's just you would run out of time, and there is no way to issue your case after that point. So you have to understand that that danger, situation. It takes typically about 4, sometimes 5 months after the interview for an Iranian case to be pushed through the background checks. At the end of the year, they try and accelerate that, so it takes 2 or 3 months. But they're not going to just ignore the background checks, right? There's significant concern, obviously, for Iranian males. They want to know, and Iran doesn't cooperate with America, right? So, they have to do whatever they have to do in terms of background checking to make sure your intentions towards America are good, right? And I'm just saying what it is. You may be offended or insulted by what I'm saying, but that's the reality of what the situation is. Don't blame me for being the messenger. Okay. How's Islamabad Embassy doing so far for Afghans? I think it's doing okay. Thanks as always so much for your support, says Daniela. What I don't really understand is the steps. Do I understand correctly? DS260 is at KCC, then number has to be current, and case needs to be processed in order to get the 2NL and the interview. Yes. All of that so far is correct. You have to submit your DS260. That is processed by KCC, not MVC. And then as long as your number becomes current and your DS260 is processed, then you could be interviewed. It depends also on your embassy capacity, right? You go on to say, what does the MVC status mean in Zarthisius's table? Your case is 2418. It's an EU number, so I see 18. It's 18,000. So your case is at MVC because you're not current yet, right? When you become current and you become scheduled, then your case will go firstly into in-transit status, and then the embassy will mark it as ready. Okay, so every case that says at MVC is a case that hasn't been scheduled. It may be that they're not current. It may be their DS260 was not processed. It may mean that they never submitted their DS260, but that's literally the case for all of those cases, right? That's the scenario for all of those cases that say at MVC. NVC does nothing with your case. It's just a status. Think of that as being the beginning point. That's all that means, okay? My question is, Nairobi, I think it means Nairobi, was keeping up with the VB for the first months. What happened? And it keeps taking quite a good number of cases. The reality is, if it does take a good number of cases, but if the demand has to be, let's say you've got 250 people being added to a pot, or 250 cases, and you're only taking 160 out, then that's 90 cases that you have to take the next month. And then the next month, there's another 250, including the 90 that are in there already. So that's 340. And if you now only take 150 cases, or you take 200 cases, you've still got a lot left in the bucket for next month, right? That's what's going on in Nairobi. So they're doing pretty well. This month, I was, sad to see that they didn't do quite as well as last month, but I'm hoping they'll get to the sort of 250 interview level. And if they get to that, then with the 4 remaining months of scheduling, they could do another 1,000 cases, which is another 2,000 people roughly. Okay, so fingers crossed. Zimbabwe, the number is 62K something. Is there a chance you'll be interviewed? Yes, you should be. How is Nairobi Embassy? Just talked about that. Case number 48K. You don't need to be worried, Nelly. They're currently about 10,000 less than your number, roughly, and they've got about 32 cases per 1,000. So if they have 32 cases per 1,000 and they are currently 10,000 numbers under you, then there's 320 interviews. Now, 320 interviews is unlikely to happen all next month. So that probably means you'll be interviewed in July, maybe at the latest August. But you're in pretty good shape. You don't need to worry. And I'm assuming that they'll continue doing what they're doing, right? Addis 40K, is that safe? I'm full in loose hope. Yeah, so you've got a bigger problem in Addis, right? Addis, funnily enough, we know they took some cases early in the month, almost immediately, as soon as the visa bulletin was released in March. They took some cases around about, we think it's about 100 cases, possibly 110. Those cases were case numbers that have been skipped in the lower number ranges up to about, I think, 11,000 or so. Now, they've scheduled other cases for up to about 14,200. I think it's 14,214 is the highest case number that they've scheduled. And so between 14,000 and 40,000, there's a big number of cases left to schedule, right? Which means unless Addis suddenly go into overdrive, they suddenly start scheduling 200, 300 cases per month, it's going to be very difficult for them to get to your number. Now, I haven't done the math exactly, but I think it's going to be quite risky for you in Addis, which is why for some months now, I have been saying that people at your case number range in Addis should get to another embassy, right? And if you listened to what I said and took action to what I said, then you may have another chance because you may now have moved your case to some other embassy. But if you didn't listen to what I say, you didn't hear it, or you decided to ignore my advice, then it's probably not going to work out very well for you, I'm afraid, right? So that's why I talk. That's why I get on here, to try and save some of the cases that could be saved through taking action. But some people wait, and then 2 or 3 months later, they're like, oh, what should I do? Well, what you should have done is listen to me in January and February when I was talking about what to do. That's what you should have done. Hello, sir. Please, AS75K is safe. I can't say that's safe, right? I can't say it's safe. Safe to me is a word that means I don't have to worry. I can relax. You know, there's almost no way I'm not gonna miss out, right? At 75K, I can't say that you're safe. I can say that you've got a chance, some chance, but we need to start seeing the visa bulletin move more than it has done. And your chance is also dependent on your embassy. You can, in this process, your number can become current, but your embassy might not schedule you, right? And that's because they are backlogged, they're working behind, and that's a real risk. So if we do see the visa bulletin increase quite a lot for Africa, that'll be good news for high case numbers, but it will also be a little bit unfair for lower case numbers, because some of those lower case numbers will get skipped. And that's kind of unfair. It just happens that way, but that's the reality. Okay. Do you think the next VB in the EU can jump for a few thousand? EU 21,000 is safe, right? I mean, let's try and use a little bit of common sense. You don't need to answer me that question. There's almost no scenario I can think of where they're just not going to get to 21,000 in the next 4 months of scheduling. I mean, just use a bit of common sense. Will they jump by a few thousand this visa bulletin? I hope so. I don't know that you'll be current in this visa bulletin, but I wouldn't be surprised if you were. I'm hoping that we'll see the numbers move reasonably for EU, Africa, and Asia in particular. That's what I hope. I've texted KCC. You texted KCC? They don't answer text. They don't even have a text system. I think you hopefully mean emailed. Asking if my DS-260 has been processed, because my case became current in February, and I was afraid it may be the reason for delay. That may be the reason for your delay. It may be the embassy that you're with. Let me know what embassy you're actually at. Lisha, that's a nice name. Our case number is OC 2012 OC. Oh wow. Do you reckon we have a chance for an interview? That's right on the bubble, right? That's right in what I think is going to be the beginning of the risky range. So hopefully it will work out well for you, and the number will be just above your number. But it's a toss of the coin at the moment. I really don't know whether you're going to get in or not. I hope you do. Fingers crossed for you. Okay. Any news from 2023? Yes, 2023 called, and 2023 said, we're over, we're done. DV 2023 is finished completely. There is no further action on DV 2023. All of the visas were given away. They gave away more than the maximum limit allowed by law. They broke the law by giving away too many visas, right? They actually broke the law. And I'm not going to complain about that for once, because I'm glad they gave too many visas away, right? But it does mean there's absolutely no way, there is absolutely no scenario where DV 2023 cases still continue. Same for DV 2022, right? It's over. The only reason we still talk about DV 2020 and 2021 is because of the lawsuits in those years, right? And DV 2020 is the only year that almost everybody that didn't get a chance to get interviewed has a chance in DV 2020. In DV 2021, you either had to be at certain embassies to take advantage of a case called the Rye case through Curtis Morrison, which held open some chance for some people from about 26 different embassies, mainly around Europe. And the other case that has keeping the chances over is another case from Curtis Morrison that, and there's another one I think, but I think they were all done from one of the other law firms. But there's the Good Luck case as well. But if you weren't if you're not in one of those European cases and you're DV 2021 and you didn't participate in the Good Luck case, then your chance is over as well. And that's you need to come to terms with that if you're a DV 2021 case. If you chose not to be in the lawsuit, that's it. Your chance is gone. Okay, with the exception of the Rye case, just to be clear. And you can look on Curtis Morrison's page about which countries are covered through the Rye case. RAI is the way is that Rye case. Hi, Britt. Dakar didn't send to an L since January. Is there any chance of high case numbers like 60K? Well, if an embassy stops scheduling cases, which unfortunately is their right to do, then there is nothing we can do to force them to do that scheduling. So it really is a question I can't answer. I don't know what they're going to do in the next 4 months. Are they suddenly going to go and start scheduling a bunch of cases, or are they not? I don't know. So I can't tell you. There's no behavior I can sort of check on to say, yeah, they're going to do this or they're going to do that. Let me just check, though, on Zarthisius' site for Dakar. Yeah, so they had taken 175 cases prior to the 1st of January, and then nothing since, as you said. And so, yeah, you just don't know. Are they going to continue? Are they going to restart? There's no way to be certain about that. Sarah says, my question is, I am the principal applicant. My husband cannot obtain his criminal record from Turkey. He's Iraqi. What to do in this case? Why can't he get his criminal record? He needs to, okay. Everybody needs to read the reciprocity page for the country where you might need a police certificate from, and follow the instructions in the reciprocity page. But you need to be really clear about this. You need to read the instructions and then follow the instructions and show that you followed the instructions, because you must go through the steps that they lay down there, right? And if there is some exception in the reciprocity page for someone in that situation, then the CEO will know about that, right? But first of all, read what the reciprocity says, reciprocity page for Turkey, right? If he's required to get a police certificate because he was there for more than the time, if he's required to get that police certificate and he can't get it, then it could lead to him not getting his visa, right? So you need to put some effort into that. Okay. What do I think about Asia becoming current? It shouldn't happen. I've been saying for months that should not happen. Now, Could someone at KCC lose their mind and just make the region current? It's possible. I can't rule it out completely, right? But it would be very surprising. It would be. It has happened in previous years where they shouldn't have done that, but they did that anyway, and it causes absolute chaos. It's completely unfair if they do that, because if your case number Asia 40,000 or something, then you should by now understand that everyone with case numbers lower than you is supposed to have more chance than you, right? So if they make Asia 40,000 current, they make Asia current, then it's very unfair to the people who have low case numbers. But just use some common sense. It took 8 months for us to get from 0 to 8,000, 8 months of scheduling, and there are 4 months left. Why do you think they're going to jump from 8,000 to 45,000 or whatever the number is, right, in the last 4 months? Why would they do that? It doesn't make any sense, does it? So, so you have to think a little bit of common sense. Obviously, everybody keeps the dream alive, keeps the hope going, and you will continue to do that until the last moment. But the last moment is going to be in July. That's when we'll see the final visa bulletin for 2024. And that concerns September interviews. And once that's published, it's not going to be changed, right? So you'll know in July. Hey, Tech Pirate, how are you doing? At the current pace, where do you think Asia will reach? Not a question I can answer, because I don't believe they're going to keep to the current pace. The number of interviews scheduled this month was okay, about 400, better than the 300 they scheduled last month, but not as much as I expect or hope. And so I don't know what they're going to do in terms of scheduling. So we'll have to wait and see. I'm not going to make a bold prediction, but I do think that if I were managing this right now, I would push the numbers up, probably a little bit more than is justified, because I would want to see more interviews happening throughout the region. And this is the same for Asia, Africa, and Europe. And I would want to be taking advantage of those embassies that are working well to get the numbers in general up, right? I'm sure you have watched it, Tech Pirate, but watch the video I posted yesterday. I explained yesterday how by only sending 2,500 last month, and also, in February and also in March, they're missing out on around about 1,000 scheduled interviews per month that they should be doing, and that's about 2,000 people per month. So are they going to fix that in the final 4 months? I hope so, but I can't be certain, obviously. And they certainly could. They could schedule much more than 3,500. They could schedule 4,500, 5,000 quite easily. But only if they push the visa bulletin numbers up significantly, and that's why I would like to see them kind of lead or push the visa bulletin numbers a bit higher than is strictly speaking necessary. Okay. AF54K, is it safe? Yes, of course. I mean, look, the number is at AF52,000 right now. You're at 54,000. 2,000 more than the number. Really? You've got to ask me? Like, come on. Yols. Of course, it's In fact, it's not even 54,000. I think it's 54. Like, I don't know what your number is. Is it 540? If your number is 540 and you're asking, is it safe? Come on. Hello, 5 months, 221G. No need for send documents, Jordan. Is that normal? What should I do? Yeah, you're in Jordan. You are in the Middle East. There is significant concern with terrorism and that sort of thing in the countries around the Middle Eastern area. I'm talking from an American perspective. You obviously know your country and your region to be what it is, full of happy, peaceful, God or Allah-loving people, not the picture painted by American politicians, perhaps. But nevertheless, there are sort of concerns, and not all the countries in the Middle East cooperate well with America. They sometimes have the appearance of doing so, but in the background, they're not really doing that. And so there are concerns, right? And so, 5 months is kind of a long time. That tells me that they are, for some reason, they're digging. It's probably, maybe you've got some sort of travel history within the region, the Middle East region. Maybe your name matches someone or appears on one of the terrorism concern lists. And it may be your name is very similar to somebody else, and they've just got to check out, are you that person they're concerned about, or are you a friend of the person they're concerned about? It can be a complete misunderstanding, but it can take time to resolve. However, you still have several months, so you're lucky that you've got several months, still to go, and therefore you should be able to get processed in time. Okay, so fingers crossed for you. Poppy Mo. Okay, my dog's name is Poppy. Hi Simon, why can't we have DV interviews at Uganda Embassy? Nairobi seems backlog. I'm not quite sure. Don't know what the politics or whatever behind that are. Nairobi has become a bit backlogged. Even though they started off pretty well, they're not doing enough interviews. They've reduced the capacity a little bit. That kind of caught us all out. Okay, ICC, how are you? I'm getting very stressed out for 51k Cairo and slow progress. Do you think things will pick up or remain at the same pace till the end of the year? ICC, you should know by now. I can't really guess that, right? I don't know what Cairo are going to do. I'm getting frustrated that they're not picking up their numbers. Actually, they did pick up their numbers, to be fair. Let me just check. I think it was about 150 they did. What am I doing? Cairo. Let's see. Yeah, they just did 153. In February, they took 103. In January, they took 144. So March is the best number they've taken so far, but it's still well behind what they can do. Let me just check something here. Like, what was the best month that Cairo has done? Let's see. Cairo. Right, so in June of last year, they took 270 cases. Then in July, they took 197, that's almost 400, about 400 cases in July. So they scheduled 400 cases for September after having scheduled about 270 for August. They have the capacity. It's frustrating to me to see that they're not using the capacity they have. That's why I'm frustrated to see Cairo only taking 153, even though it was better than last month. It's not good enough, right? That's what I'm thinking about Cairo. OC, yeah. So Diane, very similar to a question that was asked earlier, where you've got someone from your region at OC 2012, I think it was. You're a few above that, but again, you're right on the cusp there, right? You're right in the area where you might be lucky or you might just miss out. I can't tell you which way it's gonna go. I hope I'm gonna be proven wrong. Frankly, it would be nice to see OC go to 2,500 or something. I just can't see any scenario where it goes much higher than that. It's just it wouldn't make sense to me that it goes much higher than that. 2,000, 2,100 is about the scary range, I think, for OCs. So we'll see. EU 39,000, risky, very risky. That's pretty high. AS 27,000, would it be current? 27 hash. I'm going to assume you mean 27,000 because 2,700 is already current. 27,000, it's a bit risky. Okay, regarding DV court cases, can the appeal court take years to give the decision? They already have. They've already the appeal was heard in September of 2022, so they've already taken 18 months. Can they continue that? There is no timeline on them. There's no rule that says they have to only take this amount of time or that amount of time. They can take as long as they want to take. Very frustrating. Is there any legal process to request for an outcome? No. Can they drag this for years and years and years? Yes, they could. There's a 2017 case that was going on for years. I'm not even sure that one ever got finalized. It didn't affect so many people, but it carried on for a long time, right? So yeah, some cases go on for years, unfortunately, and there's no procedure to say, hey, Mr. Appeals Court judges, you've had enough time. You've got to let us know by the end of this week what your decision is. There is no process like that. The lawyers have no ability to push that in that way. They literally just have to wait. There's nothing they can do. Okay, and it doesn't. Well, I won't get into that, but But anyway, we just have to wait. Can Nepal hit 13K this year? Maybe. That's about the highest number that is selected. So Nepal has its typical sort of 3,800 and something selectees. They often go current for that country, for that particular country, so everyone gets a chance. It wouldn't be totally surprising if that happens again. And KDU Embassy has done some extraordinary things in the past. I think they took 900 interviews in 1 month. And so whatever number goes current, almost certainly KDU will interview everyone under that number. They're pretty strong on that. Okay. DV 2022 is finished. Its fate is it's finished. There is no continuation of that. There's just no way that can be continued. Asia, 14,500 safe. If yes, what do you think it will get current? I don't know if it's safe. It is below the number that I think is mathematically safe. What we're now thinking about is not so much the theoretical capacity, which is what I predicted back in January, but the number of interviews being scheduled and happening each month, right? So I hope to see a reasonable jump. Maybe they go to 10, 11, even 12,000 this month for Asia. That's what I would do if I were managing that process. I would push Asia in that way to try and get as many interviews being scheduled as possible. But it's better for them to push the numbers a bit early and then slow down in the last month, rather than sort of pushing the numbers higher for the last month, August and September, because that just creates a last minute chaos, right? It's much better to have a busy June and July than force yourself into a position where August and September have to be really busy, because that just means it's absolute chaos at the last minute, which is not good for anybody. It's not good for the consular staff, not good for KCC, and it's certainly not good for the applicants. So I'm really hoping they listen to what I'm saying. They don't care about what I'm saying, but I'm hoping they'll somehow read my mind and push the numbers a little bit more aggressively this month. I certainly hope so. Can you explain about ISL Embassy and what you predict about how many cases will be scheduled in total? There's not much I can say about ISL. They're a bit of an unknown quantity because there are no Pakistanis selected. There's no real track record. They do what they want to do. They're a pretty big embassy. They can take a bunch of cases. They've treated Afghan cases pretty well over the last couple of years. And so, I hope they will do well, but I have no sort of track record to lean on. Okay. My confirmation number starts like 2025. Is it right? Yes, it's right, because it's only a confirmation number. You entered the lottery back in October, beginning of November, perhaps. You got a confirmation number. That's not a case number. The people that are giving their case numbers already checked their results last May, and they got a case number. So they had a confirmation number, and when they went in to check, they either saw you are not selected, which is what the main answer that 20 plus million people see, and then about 70,000 people saw a different answer. They saw a letter saying, congratulations, you are selected. Here's your case number, right? A case number is different from a confirmation number. And so, yes, your 2025 confirmation number is correct that it starts with that. And I know there's some people that believed, I think, some YouTubers that pretend they know things about TV lottery when they know absolutely sweet FA, as we say in England. And they came up with these silly theories that if you had some combination of letters and numbers after that 2025, like if you had 6 letters and 4 numbers or whatever was the numbers, then that meant that you had a chance of being selected. That meant you were going to be selected. Complete bullshit. These people have no freaking idea what they're talking about. And unfortunately, there are plenty of YouTubers that I don't know why they do it. They enjoy a little bit of fame or something. I don't know. I don't understand. There are people that don't know anything about TV lottery and go and talk about TV lottery as if they know things. And I've had some of them even argue with me about some of the stupid stuff they've said. So I wish they would just shut up. Frankly, they're completely pointless. But there you go. Constantine, my case 17K became current in February. Good. Embassy is ABD. Okay. 2NL was not received. No message KCC asking if the DS260 was processed. Their answer was, your request to switch embassy is denied. Idea why? They didn't understand, or they understood but they were tired, or the person answering that case got confused. I don't know. Whatever the case is, whatever the situation is that caused them to give you that answer, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that that answer is not correct. It's not what you were asking. So if you really want to know if your DS260 is processed, you can ask again. But asking doesn't change whether that case is processed or not, right? It just, whatever will be, will be. Now, in terms of your embassy, let me put that in there. What's going on? Where's that gone? Down, 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 down. There we go. Abu Dhabi took, I'm looking at last year. That's not very useful. Hang on a second. ABD. Right, so they took 30 cases in March. For May interview, they took 30 cases, 12 of which were Africa, and Asia was 18. In February, they took 31 cases, 4 from EU, 27 from Africa, none from Asia. And then 47 in January. So they're a little bit kind of behind. Let's see. Let me see if they're up to date. 38. No, they are backlogged. They're a little bit backlogged. Your EU, right? 17,000. They're a little bit backlogged. You have some kind of a chance, right? Fingers crossed. I think you should be okay at 17K. Should be okay. Okay, AS 2024, 12,000 from Iran, Embassy, Montreal. Yeah, with everything that I said earlier, though, to the gentleman or lady that asked about Iran, 10,500. So, I hope you were paying attention then. You need an early interview, and Montreal is kind of known for issuing DS5535s, and almost certainly, if you've got an Iranian male on your case, whether it's the principal selectee or the derivative, they will ask for a DS5535 to be filled out. In fact, if I were attending an interview there in Montreal, I would try and get the DS5535 and fill it out and go with that form filled out, because you're almost certainly going to be asked for it. So see if you can download it from the internet, fill out the questions, or at least read it and see what they're going to be asking. If you were smart, you filled out your DS260 with all the possible history, and therefore they've got everything that the DS5535 asks, or almost everything. But nevertheless, if you've got an Iranian male on your case, you're going to be almost certainly, 99% of the time, in Montreal in particular, you're going to be delayed with some sort of post-interview background checking. Okay, so it's almost unavoidable. And sometimes people ask me, well, I got my visa to Canada recently, or I got a B1 to the USA or something like that. But surely that will help me. No, it doesn't help you. They go through these background checks anyway, and they certainly don't care what Canada do as a background check. Canada is not a part of America, right? 59k safe in Uganda. I hadn't looked at Cameroon, actually. Let me just see what Cameroon took. Cameroon, Uganda. They took 140 cases, slight increase. So they took, in January, they took 121 cases, then 121 in February, and then 140 in March, for which, as we know, is for May interviews. Their highest number is in the low 40s, just over 42,000, I think. And they're taking about, that's 2,000, they're taking around about 20 cases per 1,000. So they are, to catch up to the 52,000, they would have to interview about 200 interviews, which is probably more than they can take in 1 month. So they're probably not going to be at 50,000 plus until, let's say, after the next month. Did you say what number you're at? 59k. Hang on. So 17 at 20, 340. Right. So you might get an interview in August, roughly, at the current pace of scheduling in Cameroon. Now, if Cameroon suddenly now takes, let's say, 250 or 200 plus in the next month, then that will change, and maybe you could get into July, right? But it's going to be probably more like August, maybe even September before you get your interview. So good luck, fingers crossed for you. But if I had 59k in Cameroon, I would feel reasonably comfortable, even though it's going to be quite a late interview. Okay, so you've got a good chance. Let me do some quick ones here. What chance above in SA above 3,800? You've got a chance, but it's a bit risky. AF71 Mombido. What's Mombido, for goodness sake? Mombido? Mombido. Do you mean Mumbai? I don't know. Mombido. Do I still have a chance? Yeah, you've got a chance, just not a safe number, right? But you've got a chance. How is my case looking? EU 28.6k. Should I expect to get a 2NL? Do you have any insight on how the Bulgarian embassy is doing? Let's have a look at Bulgaria for a start. Sophia. Sophia is the name of my my daughter, so always like that one. Right, they didn't take any cases in February or in March. Now that might mean they've got a very small number of cases to take anyway, because let's see, they scheduled, they're sort of, I can't say they're backlogged because they just don't take many cases, right? So you'll have to wait and see. Could 28.6k get current? I hope so. It should do. And if it does, you have a chance, right? Fingers crossed for you. Okay, what do I think about DV 2024? I think every day about DV 2024, every single day. I've thought about DV lottery every single day for the last 10 years. And I've talked about DV lottery every day for the last, 10 years to someone. I've either made videos or I've answered questions on my blog or on Telegram or on Twitter. I talk about it all the time. So, so when you ask questions like, what do you think about DV 2024? Try and be a bit more clear, a bit more specific, a little less vague, and maybe I'll be able to answer. What about EU 22K? Got a good chance. Any predictions for when EU 32K might be current? If it gets current, it will be right at the end, right? Warsaw Embassy. I was disappointed with Warsaw's numbers this month. What the hell went on there? Let me just check that. So they took 143 cases in January. They took 100 cases in February, and they took 43 in March. I can't believe there was only 43 people that wanted interviews. That doesn't make sense to me. They are they're taking around about 50 cases per 1,000. They are sort of up to date, so maybe there was only 43 cases, but it seems unlikely. But that would be one of the embassies, for example, in Europe. The whole of Europe only took 250 cases, right? So that's kind of why I'm saying they need to push the numbers. They need to raise the feasibility to a case number probably 23, 24,000 would be my hope, that they go, something like that, maybe even 25,000. It wouldn't harm to push the numbers a little bit further like that, to open up more cases and let embassies like Warsaw, that we've seen do a lot of interviews, like 200 or 300 per month. It wouldn't harm to actually sort of cause that to happen early in June and July. That would be better than trying to sort of do a last minute rush in August and September. So fingers crossed for that. Let's hope we see that. Okay. Oh man, complicated question here. I'm Ugandan. I was in an Arab country. When I got my PCC, it had my first name, my father's 3 names. Oh, I hate these name questions. My grandpa names, and lastly my other names. 7 names. 7 names. So who needs 7 names? I have 3 names. That's more than enough. Why do you need 7 names? Good Lord. What should I do? Would it affect me? I don't know. What's your question here? I honestly had my first name, father's 3 names, grandpa names, and lastly my other names. 7. I have no idea what you're asking. Are you saying that it's got too many names? I don't know what to say to you, Appio. I don't really know what your question is. That's the problem there. Will it affect you? Well, having 7 names is confusing. Like when you wake up in the morning, you look in the mirror. What name do you use to talk to yourself? Must be very confusing. Hi, Simon. Thanks for your advice. How about 51K Casablanca for interview? If it gets current, then that should be okay, right? Fingers crossed. I've changed embassy from Turkey to Kuwait. Will it be helpful? Maybe. What can I say about that one? I mean, maybe. It depends on your situation entirely. You didn't give me enough information to ask for me to answer. Case number safe in Kenya, 46,000. Yes. It's just a few thousand, right? So you've got a possibility to get interviewed next month in the next 2NL batch. Had an interview on March 11th in Abu Dhabi, and CEO saying, "Where is your diploma?" I told him I don't have a diploma, only a certificate we received when we graduated from 12th grade, and he gave me 221G. Okay, so I don't know what to say there, because education systems are very different throughout the world. Some people, receive diplomas or certificates, etc., and that's fine because that's normal for their country. But probably, where are you from? You don't mention where you're from, but maybe you're not from that country, and so therefore he doesn't know whether the CEO didn't know whether that was a valid certificate or not. But hopefully you're proving your education up to about age 17 or 18, to the point where you could have entered the university immediately. You could have gone into university with the qualifications you had. That's the point they're looking for, right? And if you attend the interview in a foreign country, a country where they're not used to seeing education certificates from your country, then sometimes they have to go back to some other embassy to check, is this the right education level for that country? And that's why you're entered into 221G. Okay. When will KCCC start sending 2NL for interview of May? They've been doing that for the last 2 to 3 weeks. They've issued 2,565 2NLs for May. And I think they're probably stopped now. They may send a few more on Monday, Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, but I don't think so. I think it's probably done now. How's Finland doing? almost, I don't even have to check. They're such a small embassy. It's not like they would ever get into a backlog situation. They're fine. Like, don't worry about it. What do you say on EU 40,000 for DV 2024? Do I have any chance? Not much, Pitar. Not much chance, I'm afraid. That's fairly clear. There's no good reason why they should go current to that number. Now, is it impossible? No, it's not impossible that they go current to that number, but it's just not likely to happen. How many days will it take to solve 221G? It depends what reason you were entered into 221G. In your case, it's about education. It could take a few weeks, but I can't be specific. I don't know all of the reasons why you entered 221G, right? About your Asia prediction cutoff, 17 to 25, would be the same as so far. Yeah, understand that prediction, those predictions I made in January, were about capacity, assuming that they issue all 55,000 visas. My concern now is whether they're issuing enough 2NLs, enough interviews per month, to actually get to the 55,000. If they don't get to the 55,000, if they don't schedule about 70,000 people, then those numbers are going to look too high. My predictions for each of the regions will look too high, right? So my predictions were a mathematical capacity. Like, if I often talk about filling a bucket. If you've got a 5-gallon bucket, right, that's the capacity of the bucket. It doesn't matter, the speed at which you fill the bucket, in a sense. I always say that, try and give people an idea of that. The bucket is still only going to hold 5 gallons, right? But you can underfill a bucket. And if you underfill a bucket, then there's a lot of water still left over, right? Okay. Thanks for your time on dev program. I submitted the DS260 in February. As of now, I don't know if my case has been processed. Usually does KCC notify when the case is processed? No, they don't notify you. You can email them and ask to see whether it's processed. Not quite sure why you submitted it so late. So fingers crossed though for you. If we get the visa, should we land in the US before September or before the end of the year? Or do we have the 6-month deadline even if it gets to 2025? Yeah, this is a confusing question that's always asked to me. I'm confused how people think. People, like, how could there be a September 30th deadline for entering the USA? What about people that have their interview on September the 29th? Do you think they have 1 day to get on a plane and get into the USA? Why does anyone think that's a thing? Why does anyone even think that's a sensible question? No, it's not a sensible question. And yes, there will be some people entering the USA for the first time from DV 2024 in 2025, right? Because when you're given your visa, it will have an expiry date. So you can enter any time up until that expiry date. The expiry date is 6 months from the day of your medical, not your interview, the medical, right? And it's based on the validity of the medical, right? So typically, you do your medical maybe a couple of weeks before the interview, and therefore you'll have about 5.5 months of validity after the visa is issued. Okay, that's how it works. And so, yeah, you don't have to rush to get there by September the 30th. It's a really strange question. But I'm not saying you're a lunatic for asking that question. Lots of people ask me that every year. I just don't know why. What's the thought process to get to that point? I don't quite understand that. But great DV advisor on YouTube. Yes, I am. I'm on YouTube. Follow him. Thank you, Miko. I have a complicated DV case last year, but after listening to his advice, made it to the US. Cheers, Britt Simon. You're very welcome, Miko. That's awesome. Thank you for the shout out. Appreciate it. Liberia, do I have a chance? Yeah, look, Monrovia is kind of like, the embassy I would want to be at the moment, because they're keeping right up with the visa bulletin. We'll see if they can continue that if the visa bulletin jumps up. But 72,000. It's kind of high number, but it's not impossibly high by any means. And Monrovia is, pretty cool embassy. So you've got a chance, right? If you have a PhD degree, do you need to show your high school diploma? Great question. Technically, yes, you have to show your high school diploma. The fact that you got a higher degree does not mean that you got to that degree position through a normal course of formal education. And it's the normal formal course of education up to about age 18 that is actually the qualifying level that you need. And there are ways that you could say, for example, you don't do all of your secondary education, but you take an adult entry exam and therefore do a higher level degree without having the secondary education. In that case, some COs will refuse that case, other COs will accept that case and would approve that case. And it varies, it's up to the CO. So if I were you, I would take the secondary education information as well, personally. It just makes it easier. Why wouldn't you? Confirmation number is 2025, what we talked already. Do I stand a chance this year to be selected? You stand a chance? Yeah, of course you do. It's just I can't tell you, what your chance is. If you are from Europe, Asia, or Africa, your chance is about 1 in every 100 to 200 years you enter, roughly speaking. So depends on the year, but roughly about that. If you're from Oceania, your chances are about 1 in 20 years, roughly. So, better to be born in the down under. So I don't know where you're from. But you have a B8 F5 on your confirmation number. Maybe that means something special. Go ask some of those YouTubers. Asia high case number can tool me your tink. Tool me your tink. My tink. What am I tinking? Oh my god. What do I think? That's awesome. Tell me your tink is what you're trying to say. Tell me your thinking. Okay. I don't know. I'm just chuckling about your question, really. But good luck. As from 52K upward, the case density drops with holes occupying 70% and above. Will this influence the visa bulletin for the upcoming months? And does it equally mean a drop in cases per 1,000? Yeah, it obviously means a drop in cases per 1,000. Well, okay, so when I talk about the number of cases per 1,000 for a specific embassy, no, that number doesn't typically drop unless there's a cutoff of a country that is normally assigned to that embassy, right? So I want to give an example, but I don't think I'll go into an example, but what does that sort of lower density mean for the visa bulletin? Does it mean that anything can happen to the visa bulletin? It does mean that they can make more cases current to get the same number of cases, right? So one thing is at the regional level and another thing is at the country level or embassy level. But yes, it does help to justify my thoughts about the fact what I expect to see a bit of an increase in pace, because you're right, there is a cutoff. We're about to go into a slightly lower level of case density with more holes. And so, yes, that will help them accelerate a little bit if they want to do that, but they still have to want to do that. I'm a DV 2021 winner, but since years ago, I can't get a message from KCC and others, but I trust in God for the best. Well, good luck. I hope you're on a lawsuit or that you're in Europe, because that's the only way really on, for a DV 2021 case that you're going to get any chance, no matter what God says, whatever she says. Netan, I'm from Bhutan. Is AS14K possible to call for an interview? Yeah, it's possible. Okay, couple more questions, then we'll have to call it a day. It's been quite a long session. Okay, thank you, Simon. I have a question. Last year I was selected, and I think my case number is very high, 23K Asia. And I have already applied again for DV 2025. Do you think it will be a problem? There is no problem that you've applied for DV 2025. You may get a chance with your DV 2024 case, although it is a high case number, so you may not. But you can win again in May for DV 2025. That's possible. It happens every year. Every year I get emails and notes from people that have been selected twice, 3 times sometimes. And there's no conflict between the two. The DV 2025 case won't be ruined by the 24 case or vice versa. There's no conflict. Okay, so it's fine. Okay. Carmen, you're talking about Finland again. The reason Finland, so let's see, these are for September. Okay, Finland. You're concerned because Finland only has 7 cases so far. Yes, but Finland only has 29 selectees, which is probably about 17 cases, and of those 17 cases, probably about 5 or 6 are current so far, because the 17 cases or whatever it is, maybe 15 cases, is spread over the full number range of the whole lottery range for EU, right? So the fact they've only done 7 cases is completely normal, right? Stop worrying about stuff that you don't need to worry about. One more question, if I can find something. Hakuna Matata. I like this guy, Major Matata. Thank you for your encouragement. As a family received our 2NL, you're a great person, Hakuna Matata. He's even, I hadn't seen that until I got to the end. So he's even taking my little joke. I've got a silly sense of humor. I'm sorry. Okay, one more question. Zimbabwe, do they take transfers? Let me just check their performance for a start. Zimbabwe. Right, they took only 6 cases in February, but they just take very few cases, right? That doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. If we look at the visa bulletin for Africa, for Zimbabwe, they have 216 selectees, which would roughly be about 100 cases. But those 100 cases, let's say 110 cases, are spread over the full 122,000 range, right? So up to now, they've probably got maybe 50 cases current, and they have scheduled so far 13 cases. It's not terribly bad because not everyone applies anyway, right? So it's not terrible. It's not really a problem. So you've got a chance if you want to transfer to Zimbabwe, if you live there, right? Okay. Okay. This will be the last question, just because I think it's kind of a fun question. I see people confused about this one all the time as well. When do the potential selectees get selected? I know the results are in May, but I'm curious about when they actually run the system to select winners. You might be surprised at the answer. They run the draw process way back in, I think, probably November or December, maybe January, but I doubt it. I think it's is a long time ago. And the reason I'm saying that is that I've seen cables, I've seen documentation that proves that in January they're already talking about the cases that are selected and whether they need to add cases. There's conversations like that we've seen, the emails that go on between various people in KCC, and the embassy is talking about that, right? Or not the embassies at that point. But so the draw is done quite early, and then between the draw, which is done, like I say, at the beginning of the year, by the beginning of the year, it's done. And then between that time and May, they're going through and they're sifting out, the cases they want to disqualify, because typically bad photos or fraudulent entries, multiple entries, those sort of things. They're weeding out all of those cases. And then in May, they announce the results. But it's it's a long process they go through prior to announcing the results. Okay, but the first thing they do, the draw process, kind of simple. 20 million people enter. They'll be split up into their regions. All of those regions will be separate, and they randomly mix up all of those cases and number them from 1 to whatever number in that region, right? And then they start going through those cases, and they take case number 1 and case number 2 and case number 3, and they go through and they check those cases programmatically. It's all happening automatically. And case number 3 gets kicked out, and then case number 4 is okay, and case number 5 gets kicked out. And those cases that get kicked out because of a bad photo, or because they've realized that person has entered multiple times, or whatever the reason, those cases are the holes that we see. That's why we see gaps between the numbers. They're holes. And so, we've known that for many years. I originally got hold of the data and figured that system out in 2013 or 2014 or something. So, I've been explaining about what I call holes theory for many years. And anybody that talks to you about holes, they're talking to you about something that I explained to them and others in the beginning. So that's basically the process of the draw, etc. That's what goes on between the November entry and the draw, or the announcement of the results in May. I also know, by the way, that even while there is background checking going on, even while the entries are still being made. So during October, they would have been actually working on the cases and figuring out which cases didn't have good photos and that sort of thing. They would be checking those as early as that point. All right, everybody, we'll call that a day. It's been quite a long session today. Thanks for joining me today. Watch my video that I posted yesterday, please. It will bring you up to date into why I'm a little bit concerned about the pace of scheduling, and why I want to see more scheduled interviews next month. We've got 4 months of scheduling left, and right now they're at about 39,000 people scheduled, and we need to see that number in the high 60s to 70,000. 65,000 to 70,000 people should be scheduled, and that would allow for people that don't turn up at the interview, or the people that turn up for the interview but get refused, and that would give us the right number of selectees. But what they're doing right now is they're targeting at around about 60,000 roughly with the pace they're going, and that's a bit lower than I think we want to see. Okay, everybody, thanks for joining me today. Please subscribe to the channel and give me a thumbs up on this interview. Do that right now. Give me a thumbs up. All right, thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.